So Deontay Wilder remains WBC #1. Dillian Whyte drops in the rankings to 5th in the WBC rankings. Talk buzzing around that Dillian Whyte is no longer obviously mandatory for Tyson Fury at the moment. Eddie Hearn battling to get Dillian Whyte back in his mandatory shot against Tyson Fury February 2021 if he's to come through against Povetkin. Eddie Hearn saying here that Povetkin is mandatory to face Fury. The winner of this fight will be made mandatory to Fury. It's just a case of when Whyte had the date by the end of 2021 locked in, and if he wins, he'll be pushing for that date to be reinstated, said Eddie Hearn to Sky Sports. So Eddie Hearn hoping and trying to push Dillian Whyte to get back his mandatory position if he's to beat Alexander Povetkin. Eddie Hearn saying here that Povetkin is mandatory to Fury? Question mark. Mauricio Suleiman says that has made it clear that on this obviously WBC boxing scene article here, says Mauricio Suleiman has basically made it clear that Povetkin's victory over Whyte doesn't necessarily make him the new mandatory. So Eddie Hearn's got some clarification to make here. Is Povetkin automatically the mandatory against Tyson Fury now after beating Dillian Whyte? The whole WBC president doesn't seem to be saying that. He's saying that while Povetkin, article says Povetkin captured the WBC interim title, the sanctioning body president Mauricio Suleiman made it clear that his victory over Whyte does not necessarily make him the new mandatory. So Povetkin before the Dillian Whyte fight, I think it was ranked 9th in the WBC. Obviously he was beat the #1 at the time in Dillian Whyte. Now Whyte is now dropped to 5th. Deontay Wilder somehow is the #1. You know, are they putting Deontay Wilder in that #1 slot, you know, to set up just before, you know, Tyson Fury takes on Deontay Wilder for the trilogy? Are they magically going to make Deontay Wilder the mandatory? Because I remember that time the WBC made Tyson Fury the mandatory all of a sudden for Deontay Wilder. Might they do vice versa and make Deontay Wilder the mandatory for Tyson Fury, freezing out Whyte again and even freezing out Povetkin? I'm not going to put it past them doing that because they done it with Tyson Fury. But Dillian Whyte dropping to 5th place, Deontay Wilder #1 in the WBC. I suspect that they might, it'll be surprising, but could they make Deontay Wilder the mandatory for Tyson Fury, eliminating, you know, Tyson Fury having to fight any mandatories for a long time? Tyson Fury that's always talking about he should be free to do what he wants, doesn't like to be bound. Maybe they might help him out, you know, and make Deontay Wilder mandatory. Who knows? But jumping back before I start going off talking about Deontay too much, Dillian Whyte dropping to 5th place, and Eddie Hearn, as I said, talking about he wants to get Dillian Whyte back his mandatory shot. It's gonna be interesting because Dillian Whyte now has found himself in a situation where he's going in against a guy that's knocked him out in devastating, brutal fashion. He needs to get that WBC, you know, interim title back. You know, it's gonna be interesting. Is the WBC gonna reinstate automatically Dillian Whyte as mandatory if he's to beat Alexander Povetkin, because they've dropped him down to 5th place? You know, are they going to elevate him back to #1 ahead of Deontay Wilder, especially with this trilogy with Fury looming, you know, on the horizon? There's loads of stuff going on, man. It's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out. If it all hinges on Dillian Whyte beating Povetkin, which I don't believe is a foregone conclusion, you know, it's going to be interesting because Frank Warren is already speaking as if Tyson Fury don't have to fight Dillian Whyte. You know, he's already speaking as if Tyson Fury doesn't have to fight Dillian Whyte. Frank Warren said here, you know, I think he was talking about based on current situation, said Fury's co-promoter Frank Warren indicates that his boxer will not be tied to another mandatory until the final quarter of 2021 at the earliest. So Frank Warren believes that regardless of whether Dillian Whyte beats Povetkin or not, Tyson Fury don't have to fight him. Because if, you know, Povetkin is not automatically the mandatory, you know, then Tyson Fury doesn't have to fight him automatically. And if Dillian Whyte, you know, has been uninstated as the mandatory against Tyson Fury, if he beats Povetkin, does that mean he's automatically reinstated? Not necessarily. That is what I believe Eddie Hearn's going to be pushing for. He said he will be pushing for that date to be reinstated. So at the moment, Dillian Whyte has no mandatory title shot at all. Guys, Dillian Whyte right now has no title shot. He's lost against Povetkin. He has no title shot. Povetkin himself is not guaranteed a shot. And Dillian Whyte himself, even if he's to beat Povetkin, is still not guaranteed a title shot. Because if so, why is Eddie Hearn pushing for the date to be reinstated? It's obviously been cancelled. And Frank Warren himself is already talking about Tyson Fury don't have to fight no mandatory until the final quarter of 2021. So Dillian Whyte found himself in a bit of bother. And I expect and I suspect that, you know, the WBC putting Deontay Wilder in as the number one. You know, they're looking to get that WBC number one versus, you know, Tyson Fury, who's the champion. And will they just magically just make Deontay Wilder the mandatory for Tyson Fury? I'm not going to put it past the WBC doing something like that. But Eddie Hearn hoping to reinstate, you know, Dillian Whyte in his mandatory shot for February 2021 if he's to come through. It's not guaranteed at the moment. Even if he's lost and even if he wins, they've only stated the date. Even Frank Warren's talking about its latest 2021 earliest. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Negotiations, discussions, big money at the table. Drop your comments in the comment section below. What do you think about Deontay Wilder, WBC number one? Dillian Whyte dropping to 5th place in a bit of limbo, looking to going on to take on Povetkin now, November 2021. Big fight going on. Check out my video or my reaction to, you know, the Dillian Whyte versus Povetkin November 2021 announcement. Check out my reaction, you know, on a separate video. Drop your comments again, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Let's take KBV boxing to the next level. Drop your comments again. Cool.